Hello, everybody. It's Marty, the JavaScript party. I'm a buddy Rhett. We are definitely a lot later than usual. Here is her nut. Let's get that out of the way. She was actually quite surprised when I came and got her. She was like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" But my neighbors were having a garage sale, and they asked, they were like invited me to join and put some stuff in their garage sale. And so then I did. Let's see. So I got to hang out with them, which is pretty cool. I don't really get to spend enough time with my neighbors, but spent. We bought something from them that cost $10, and then we sold two things that were $1 each, and then and then I bought a cup of lemonade for $1. So we had a net $9, and then I actually had sold one of my son's things, so I gave him the $1. So yeah, but I did get to meet a lot of people, talk to a lot of people, have a good time, spend some time with some of my neighbors and all that. So it was definitely a good time. But it is now 2:12 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm going to my son's house at 7 to watch the Pittsburgh Steelers play their second preseason game. I think the team's going to be good this year, so I'm pretty excited about that. So I would say we are at the most low level nitty gritty part of this application, right? So like as we're going on this journey to try to build an application that will let you create really cool 3JS or 3D things, we spend different times at different layers of the application. Sometimes we're looking at it from like 30,000 feet, like saying, hey, when I resize, I want it to reflow and stuff like that. And that's sort of a 30,000 foot sort of idea. And then sometimes we're down at the very lowest levels. And the aspect ratio of the camera that's going to be displayed, that's as low level as we get. So when you're making low level changes, you have to really, especially in the situation we're in right now, um, that's when you can kind of see if your architecture is going to work or not. Um, so I have kind of set things up to be in certain ways, and I'm hoping to optimize certain things. And so the thing I really want to optimize is the ability to change the 3 visualizations, like to be able to make them different colors. I want that kind of code whenever you're trying to make that kind of change in the code. I want that to be the easiest. And I'm not too particularly worried about things like, oh, how is this going to work in mobile? I'm not worried about optimizing for that. I'm not worried about optimizing for languages, right? Like I'm not like, oh, this needs to be internationalized so it works in all different languages. Like those are not the things I want to optimize for. Um, I don't want to optimize for like keeping track of people who come and visit the website, like things like that. So there's like a million things, literally an infinite number of things that you could optimize for. And when you set up your architecture, uh, it helps if you have an idea of what it is you want to optimize for. Um, so some people like they'll work in a place, and in that place, based on their business, the way their customer works and all that, you get very good at optimizing for your domain. So an example I like to use a lot is like in I anytime I've ever worked in a financial, like an fin um, fintech, anytime I've worked in fintech, like the most important thing that you have to build into like the very bones of the application is um, like being able to control who can see what information. So like a lot of times what will happen is there's like an owner, and the owner has like 10 different bank accounts that they can pay things from, and they have 10 different bank accounts that things get paid into. And like you want your managers to not necessarily know about certain things. So like for example, there are some loans that they give a bonus to the person who's paying the loan if it gets paid early. Like, so if you pay, if the due date is like on the 5th, but if you pay it by the 1st, they give you an extra $100 or something, right? So a lot of times, like, they don't want the manager to know about that, but they want the owner to be able to look at their different loans and say, oh, okay, yeah, I want to pay this one early. Okay, there's no penalties or anything for paying this one late, right? So the owner is looking at all these things, seeing what the financial incentives are to pay early, pay late, things like that. But those are just like free money into the owner's pocket. And they don't want their managers to know about that money, because then the managers would be like, oh, I want some of that money, right? So like, you kind of have to build in information segregation into the very basic foundations of the application. So someone who works in fintech and they build all their everything, they sort of get into the habit of building, architecting things so that that is something that you're optimized. It'll be very easy to say, oh, okay, this group of people can see this, but that group of people can see that, right? Like, all that just to say that I want this application, I want it to be really easy to set up animations and to modify properties at the animation level. I want that to be super simple. I don't want it to be like, oh man, every time, oh, I want to change this, and I think it's going to take a week, but oh no, it took 3 months. And then, oh, I want to change this other thing that is similar, and I think it's going to take a week, and it only took an hour. You know, I want it to be like, if I'm changing a property, I want to know exactly how long it's going to take. If I decide, oh, I want to shoehorn some sort of security into this, then I don't want, I don't care if it takes 5 years to do that, because that's something I don't care about. Um, so we are working on this aspect ratio, and we're trying to figure out, okay, where would be the best place to change the aspect ratio when we go from this view. And so when we go to this view, it doesn't matter. The aspect ratio is going to be 1 because the width and the height are the same. But then when we go to this view, now the width, it's wider than it is tall. So this is showing just in a distorted way. But I would, 99 times out of 100, I want it to have the same aspect ratio of the width and the height, which it just happened to work out that it was right before. But now, and so this is probably the first really, really serious test of the existing architecture. Like, how hard is it going to be? Like, how many special things do we have to do? And then we also have the reality that I want to be able to, when I do this, I want this to resize automatically, and I want it to adjust the aspect ratio to be in this specific view. But in this other view, like, I don't want the aspect ratio to change, right? So those are the kind of things like if we need, so right now I'm working on this view and fixing it so that this ends up being a square instead of this rectangle thing. But I don't, but like right after that, I'm going to be like, oh, okay, now whenever I resize, I want to be able to do that. And I don't want to have to change some other section of code completely. And I probably will have to at this point. So at that point, I'm going to probably end up spending a lot more time than if I just coded it in both places and just sort of let both work. I could do that, and it will take a lot less time. But like down the road, I don't want to, when I go to change some property and stuff, I don't want to have to be like thinking, oh, okay, oh, in this one, I have to change it in these 2 places, but in this one, I need to change it in these 3 places, and in that one, I only need to change it in 1 place. You know, I want it to be like very consistent by property. I want the changes to be the same. And that was what really was difficult in the last application. the one I built in 2024, because in 2024, um, like when I went to go change meshes, I could literally change, or the shape, I could add shapes and all that. Like I could add three in an hour. But then when I was like trying to change like the look at position of a spotlight, it took weeks, maybe even months to get that, you know. And I really want those. I want to set this architect. The goal of this architecture is that all of those are all of the complication of that is defined, and I can figure that out. So, anyways, last time I kind of had to jump off, but I really fast. But I think at the end I said this was the place, right? This is where we create our camera that we're going to use, and the aspect ratio is in the camera. I believe it's in the camera. Anyways, I'm 99% sure that when we create this, but see, this isn't, it's so, but it's not as simple as like, oh, okay, let's just dig into where the camera gets created, because it appears that we create this camera um, when we create the when we create everything else. And so we create the camera independently of when we're changing views. So the camera's already been created. So we actually need to take the existing camera and replace it with another camera. And again, this appears to be the point to do that, but it's probably not going to be the point that works for when we resize. When we resize, there's probably a different place. And so when I figure out what that other place is, I'm going to need to come back and try to unify the two, so that in the future, for the next property, I kind of have a good path set out for myself. So anyways, so that's that. And so at this point, we want to take our camera, our existing 3 camera, and we want to I guess what we want to do is we want to tell this dude to recalculate and rebuild a new 3 camera. So this ST render gets created, and okay, so an ST render, I believe, is okay, so we are in the ST render service right now. So this ST render service probably needs to have like an update scene. And that scene, so now when I go over here, that scene it's going to have to get updated again to go back to the original 1v1. But the thing is I don't know if so when we render by ID, we need to know if we're trying to render it for the stored ST, or if we want to render it for the dynamic viewport. So, and I don't know if there's going to be other things that like we're going to want to change dynamically. I don't think so, but I don't know. But so since it seems like this render by ID should have like another argument. It seems like that's the right thing to do. I'm not sure about this, but it seems like anytime we go to render by the ID, there needs to be at that point it needs to be told like, okay, am I rendering for dynamically, or am I rendering based on the value? And so, and the only reason I'm spending so much time on this, like the reason I want to spend so much time on this is because I do want to set up like an animation where the aspect ratio changes. Um, so like I can imagine an animation where like it starts off too wide and then it gets too narrow and then it gets not quite as wide and then not quite as narrow and then kind of snaps into focus. I think that would be really cool, especially when there's like multiple things happening and all that. It just like I think that would be really cool. Vis- uh, a very cool animation, and I don't think that there's I don't know of any other tool or anything that allows you to do that. So I think it is like would be like something that would make this tool unique. Um, but anyway, so I think what we want to add here is like uh, dynamic view. And so, and then that is equal to, we're going to give it a default of false. So basically, this is a really good way to add a optional argument. So I'm saying, hey, if I get one, use it, but otherwise, don't. Otherwise, it's false. Now, up until this point, it's so something that would be really easy to think is, oh well, I only care if it's true, but if it's false, I actually probably need to redo it as well. And I don't think it's that big of a deal because this only happens when they click. So like, there's sort of two modes of coding that I have to kind of keep in check, and the one mode, let me see, is like when something is happening over and over and over again because it's tied to the UI, to the update, to the animation. And then one thing is things that just happen when you click and stuff. And the things you need to worry about change based on whether it's something that's running all the time over and over and over again, or whether it's something that is only running once in a while. And if you don't pay attention to those things, your application will get super slow with time. Now, I'm pretty sure we established that this does not happen over and over again. Oh, shoot, it does. No, wait. No. So getting new camera did not happen. But I believe it happens. I think we've established that it happens. Yeah. So anytime we change, use. So that means, so another way of putting it is you can do expensive things when you click. Like expensive things aren't too very expensive if you're just going to do them like whenever a human being is doing that. And the one major exception to that is on the drag. Like if as I'm dragging things around, that happens a lot. That happens like 1 to 200 times per millisecond. And the screen only updates 60 times per millisecond. So you also don't want to do like math when you're doing that, like on the mouse move, and you don't want to do math in this. So really what you want to do if you're on mouse moves and on that is the kind of the rule of thumb that you want to do is like you can read memory all you want in here. There's no reading memory is very, very cheap, but you don't want to set memory. You don't want to do anything that's updating memory in that. You want to do things that are updating in this. Now, if you must do something in here, like calculate something based on like a dragging and mouse movements, then you really want to use like a combination of throttling, which ArcGIS is just perfect for that, and debouncing. So the throttling part will limit like the calculations. You could say, okay, I only want you to calculate this once every 1/60th of a second. So only when the screen is only as often as the screen updates do I actually want to do a new calculation. And then Um, and that would only be for something that like a user's just doing for a little bit. You know, you wouldn't want that permanently, like this. This is kind of permanently. Uh, we do not want to have had to try to calculate something 3,800 times in the time I've been talking. Um, but so you know, if you are going to go 1/60 of a second, then the user's only doing this for a little bit, so that's okay. But anyway, so I think that is the right place to get to set the camera, and we would only want to and the thing is so like if this was happening over and over again, I would want to probably store whether this thing is being dynamically viewed or not being dynamically viewed to try to um, save cycles. So like if it's already been in dynamic view, I don't want to recalculate it. But in this mode, I don't care. But the thing is I am going to probably care when we resize here. But I'm going to worry about that when that time comes. But I'm going to, because at that point, I'm probably going to actually want to update the renderer, the actual renderer that I'm getting. I'm going to want to update that to say, how am I being displayed right now? Am I being displayed as a dynamic, or am I being displayed as a not like as based on the value? And so what I'm going to do also is I'm going to put a new line here, and this here. And the only reason I'm doing that is so I can put a comment here. And it's, true means that we are trying to view in view the is displayed in edit mode, in update mode. I guess that's not super complete. It's not super correct, so I'm gonna have to really think whenever I come back and I'm making changes in the future. Like this is true today, but probably will not stay true. There'll probably be other situations where we're going to show dynamic view, but for now, that's what that means. Again, I think that I very likely will need to add a new attribute to the ST renderer to let the renderer, so that the renderer can say whether it's currently been calculated for dynamic or whether it's been calculated not based on it, whether it wasn't calculated, whether the stored aspect ratio was being used. I don't. I think that, and I think it's because and the reason I think that is because when I resize, I'm not going to want to just blindly set it for the aspect ratio or not. But here, I do want to just blindly do it because it's not particularly expensive. Now, you might be thinking, well, just go ahead and take care of it now. Like, put the attribute on this ST renderer now, right? Like, dynamic view. False, right? Like, do it now. Why not just do it now? And that is a great, like that. There's definitely been times in my career that I would have done that, or I guess career is not the right word, but in my coding life experience, there were times that I would have ahead of time. The problem is so many times when I've done that, that wasn't the best solution when the time came. There was a better solution. And then unwinding those things is emotionally difficult, for sure, but it's also technically difficult. So, anyways, I'm going to say if, and like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing at this point. Update the view based on viewport viz shape width and height of the, and then else console log update the view. I'm just gonna say aspect ratio AR based on the stored value. All right, so basically whenever, right now, it's not gonna work for me, right? It's because all I did was write this, and it's always going to be false. So it's always, no matter what, it's going to say this. So kind of want to see it. I want to kind of see what that one looks like with the weird aspect ratio. I don't know. It might be interesting. It may not. It might be a big nothing burger, but. Oh yeah, this is, I don't know what, this is like that expression changed bug that I definitely want to fix. So yeah, so here's where you can kind of see a little bit of weirdness in the, the shape. And it is wild because like, I know that whenever I videotape these, like you can kind of see like an extra little thing there, but whenever I videotape it, if you hit pause, there is no extra one there. But I can kind of see a little extra one there. And it's just my brain sort of playing with my eyes. And it kind of like, the line doesn't look straight on these, but like if you were to pause it in the video, I think they will be straight. That's always so interesting to me. And like there's like a lot of TikTok videos where there's people that have a spinning thing, and then they have a magic marker and they're like drawing different things, and then suddenly you see like little animations just sort of appear because it's spinning, and that's going to be fun. That's going to be a fun thing to get working on these things, and that's probably a good example of something that could be like just a standalone application, right? Like an application that just lets you build those little views of things spinning, and then you just make little tweaks to it, and then you watch it spin and see what you get. There's so many things, but anyways, so as you can see, basically it says update based on stored value, but what we want is when we're in this view for it to say update the AR based on the dynamic, right? So that's correct. That's correct. And yeah, we definitely need to figure that this is not correct. And I'm pretty sure the fix for this is going to be to not show whatever is throwing this thing, not to show it um, until the property is set. So as we're moving in, like it's got a default value, and then when the default value, whatever it's complaining about, whatever property it's complaining about changing. Um, so basically, what this is a strange bug, and I don't know. I don't know why we have this bug, because to me it's not really a bug. But basically, what it's saying is that like this width, like let's say I had a value like size equals 10, and then and like I was going to draw something based on that size, and then over here, like in the constructor I set the size to 20 or something, like, and I'm not 100% sure on this. This is what I think. I think you're going to get that expression changed view because it never got to show it at 10. It never did get to draw it when it was 10. It only got to draw it when it was 20. Then, like, so if I said this, like it wanted to draw it at 10, but it never got a chance to because it got changed to 20 before it had a chance to change it. I believe that's what that expression changed before. And that my explanation like makes perfect sense in English, right? Like just because something makes sense in English doesn't mean that it's correct, but um, um, but expression change after it's been checked error. Um, I believe. See, and it says that it had a value of 1, and then the value became 3. Um, and it's not happy about that. Like, so basically the easiest way is to find out like what has a value of -1. Usually that's how I'll work backward, but it does have this app layout. So it's saying that, yeah, so if ID is greater than 0 and after init complete, then draw this. And it's like, oh, you were trying to draw something before. You were trying to draw something. I tried to draw it, but it changed from -1 to something else before. Before I had a chance to draw, I never got to draw this at -1, which is weird. And maybe it would go away if I get rid of this. Like that, and that may very well be the problem, is that it never got a chance to draw this one, which then that's not even a problem, right? Because we're not even going to have that. But it does say -1 to 3. So I don't know where it was ever 3 in this. So anyways, that is definitely for another video to figure out. Now I have run into issues where I could not, where I could not get that. I could never get it to go away. There have been times. The only time I've ever had that situation where I could never get it to go away was after an upgrade. So I can generally figure out a way to get that to go away. But there have been times where I've done an upgrade and like I could never figure it out how to get that to go away. I could never figure out exactly what the problem was. So I'm pretty sure, 99% sure that I'll be able to figure that out. All right, so basically what we want is when we go to there and we add one of these, and then we go here, so that should say update based on stored value. That's correct. And then we go here, and it should say update the AR based on stored value, and that's correct. And then we go here, and then this distraction. And so and apparently this only happens, this seems to only happen when we're going into this view specifically. So, but at this point, it should have said update AR based dynamically. Now it doesn't because we don't ever do it. But um, one good way to figure this, I'm trying to figure out how to get to this. But a good way to do that is to put a debug here, like right there, and then let it rip. So we'll go there, we'll go there. Then I'll put my debug in so that it stops here. And then we hit this button, update. And so what's really nice is there's this call stack here. Is it the call stack? Oh, we're in the runtime error. We're not at the... Okay, now there's this call stack here. And this call stack kind of shows you everything that happened. So render, this is where it got called from, right? So we can see that. And I believe you can even make it go back to this spot. Now at this render, this is what renders it. Does it know? So this is my Viz service, and this is in with my Viz components. So it does know whether we are, which view we're in. Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't know yet which view we're in. So we can go back here, and this is render native element, and then we can go back, and so this is happening after view init of the Viz component. And it has two inputs, the width and the height. I love you too. Okay, so then there's this layout loop. So, okay, so to me it seems like if I'm putting in the width and the height. Oh. If I remember correctly now, the kind of the idea was that I wanted it to always show based on the Viz width and height, which makes a lot of sense. Because when the Viz width and height, because the other, so the renderer, okay, so one thing I don't like at all in code, and it's a really bad habit, it's a bad idea that a lot of, it's just such a clever, it's so clever, it feels so good to make it work, but like writing code that isn't explicit is kind of a pet peeve of mine. Like I want the code to, I want it to be clear why we're doing things. And so this is putting me in a weird spot because it's kind of like, okay, so having a width and a height implies the aspect ratio. And that seems reasonable. So like, if the visualization width and height, and see in this case, our visualization width and height is, see, did it take me back? So, but the visualization width and height in this situation is the correct thing. And I think the visualization width and height is always going to be the correct thing. I think yeah. So I don't know if that's always going to be good enough for the aspect ratio, but it does seem like I don't know if this is going to be a problem when I decide to animate the aspect ratio, but I guess I'll worry about that when that time comes. So basically, we can calculate the aspect ratio in this, but so the thing I'm arguing with myself with is like, okay, so should I just update the aspect ratio every time when that function gets called. It seems like maybe. And and even if it is the same aspect ratio, it's only happening when, like, it's not happening over and over again, so it's not going to cause the application to get laggy. Um, all right, so I think that, yeah, I totally forgot that the idea was that this thing would, nobody else farther down the line would have any idea. It's just whoever calls this, and if they set the width and the height, that's what our aspect ratio is. Um, yeah, and so then it's almost like, okay, why do I even have an aspect ratio stored? And this is a kind of a circular argument, because the reason I have the aspect ratio stored is because I want the um, the reason I have it stored is because uh, I want to be able to animate it, and that's it. I don't really want to actually draw it in. I don't actually think there's any value to being able to set the aspect ratio, except for you want to be able to say, hey, this thing's animated, and this is how it's animated, and and I think that's the only reason I have the aspect ratio in there. So basically, it's sort of a, like, setting aside some space for something for, because in the future I know I'm going to need to be able to animate this. I'm going to need a place to do it, and I want to set it up now. And that is sort of against, like, totally against what I was just saying a second ago of waiting till the actual problem appears to solve it. And that's sort of the nature of software development. There are no set rules for what's always the best thing to do. But I do think it makes sense to calculate the aspect ratio all the time. And so let's go ahead and undo the last thing I did. And so, like, one of the big advantages to the way I'm doing this now is, like, I get to kind of think through things a lot more carefully than I ever would have in the past. But the other thing is, it's easy to forget, like, what ideas I came up with in the past, and then counter them. Okay. So basically, we always want to calculate the new aspect. Calculate. Okay, but so here's the problem, though. The problem is, this point, it doesn't know what the width and height was. So it can't really calculate the aspect ratio. So maybe I need to send in the aspect ratio like this. And I think that I would always need to send that in. And I don't know, this could be a huge mistake. So render by ID, and then I give it the aspect ratio. And then it creates the 3 camera based on the new aspect ratio. Man, I don't feel good about that at all, but I don't know where else to go. Like, it's like I'm at a mountain, I'm at a trail, it goes left, right, and middle. I have absolutely no idea which one to do. So right now I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go with passing the aspect ratio into the renderer service. I don't think that's a good idea, but I don't know a better idea. I think maybe the basic problem is, the foundational problem is that maybe the camera shouldn't be built. Shouldn't, like, maybe it was a mistake to actually create the camera before this point. Um, like, it seemed like a good idea. Like, so, because basically what happens is, um, when you create a new one, a default renderer, and I think that happens in this function. Is it this function? Get base renderer. I believe it then goes and creates a camera, a ThreeJS camera in here somewhere. Create base camera. Get camera by ID. Okay, so down here we have our ST renderer, which is this thing. Render. So this is where we get our base, and then here's where we set up our camera. And then see, but that's an optional. When the heck do we set up this ST camera 3 camera? Not in here. So that's pretty confusing, right? Like, when does the ST camera 3 camera get set? Do a search throughout the code for this. Okay, so in the ST renderer service, oh, that's where we get it. Okay, that's bizarre. Okay, so apparently it's not called ST camera. Wherever and it's looking through everything. Okay, so I'm just going to look up 3 camera and see if I can. I'm trying to figure out where this thing gets off. So this is, okay, 3 camera is equal to get camera by ID. What is this? Where am I now? I'm in ST camera service. Isn't that where I was? Apparently not. Create a base camera. Okay, so this is where the camera gets set up. May not even make any sense to even set this camera up here, because we don't use it, and we need the camera. So let's go to this definition. Dismissed. I always change my lighting at 3 o'clock so that it's a little easier to fall asleep at night. I think it makes a huge difference. Because, like, it sort of, I think it kind of tells my brain, okay, the evening's coming. All right, so here we set up our camera. So get camera, set camera, so it sets the position. Oh, equals this get camera by ID. That's this one. And this just gets it from the camera dictionary. Create camera, creates it. Oh, and so here's where our aspect ratio comes in. So it kind of seems like we don't want to even set the camera at this point. What we want to do, let's do this. Console.log. Create camera. Here. here. Let's go there. Let's get rid of that. Inspect. Go look at our console. So basically at this point, so the camera was created even before the base camera was created. I guess I should say ThreeJS camera created here. Okay, what just happened? Control Z, see what I did. Yeah, we don't want that. I don't know. I'm definitely okay, do I have another? Okay. Okay, so this is not where we created. This is not where the ThreeJS camera is created. Let's see, render camera created here. Is this it? Yeah, this is where a ThreeJS camera gets created. And this is our aspect ratio. Let's say aspect ratio set here. Inspect. And then console. And then we'll create one. Okay, so right here is where the aspect ratio is set, and this is where it's rendered. So we really don't know the width and the height until, well, let's say, okay, so here we don't know the width and height yet. So it doesn't seem like it makes sense to even create a, so it made sense when we were setting the aspect ratio. So like we set the width and the height and all that stuff, it totally makes sense to do all that stuff. Or most of the things it makes sense, but the ThreeJS camera really doesn't make sense to make it until you actually want to create a new, until you actually want to use it, right? Like we don't know, this is where we know we want to use it. When we render is when we use the camera, I believe. Now it is weird that, okay, create base camera. Okay, so I think I need to take another step back here. Let's go back all the way up to the viz component. Okay. And it really isn't, it's in this app layout component. This is the first time that the application knows what it wants. Right? When it gets created after the view is initialized, it knows. Okay. The first time I know what the AR should be. So at this point is the first time I know what the AR should be. AR should be. See, I think, so this is a shit show. I'm not going to deny that. I think it's a shit show because aspect ratio is just different. It's different than everything else. It's like its own unique sort of thing that matters at its own unique time. But the thing is that is like, it's like there's a rule that I learned when I was a little kid. It was like I before E except after C. right? That was like a grammatical rule, like a little limerick that you could learn, a little a little memory aid that you could learn, that like I before comes before Eve unless it's after C. So if you're going to have an I and E together, that's the rule. The problem is there are actually more exceptions to the rule than there are actual like instances of the rule. So the rule is a bad rule. Now the thing is to that rule, I before E except after C. That's what I found with ThreeJS when I'm working with ThreeJS is like most things there you kind of come up with a rule on how it should work and try to set up an architecture to sort of make it easy. But there's so many exceptions to every rule. And this we're already sort of at the beginning of this and we're running into an exception. And what I'm hoping to do is come up with a really clever way of dealing with this exception, and then in such a way that it doesn't sort of get lost in like the code where I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I wrote this little extra code here on the side. I want it to be like super obvious. Oh, okay, aspect ratios. But aspect ratio is just different. Like the width, all the things in the camera that you're looking at, every other thing, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, like the frustrum, the ID, the near, and the far. These things don't have to be calculated when it's getting ready to be used at runtime. The rest of these can be calculated. The ID gets calculated way before when we just come up with an idea of creating a camera, right? Like we're creating a camera and we get an ID, and the ID was created before. It doesn't matter. Like the ID makes no difference at runtime. And same thing with frustrum, and same thing with near and far, right? Like all the rest of these things, like we don't have to use the UI to figure out what they should be. So like they're just different, and that makes it difficult to write reasonable code about. And if you don't write, and it's very, very like easy to go, okay, well, so this is a one-off, so I'm just going to create this little bit of code that handles this and all that. But the problem is like this whole code will be nothing but one-offs if we go down that path. So we have to think clearly about this and carefully about it. But so basically, what do we have here? We have inspect. Let's look at our console, and we add this thing, and it says aspect ratio is set here, create base camera. Okay, and so I made a change to the code that works here. We're going to get that crazy bug. And I don't think this bug ever shows up like in runtime, like in a distributed. It says it seems like the view has been created after the parent and has been created in a change detection host. Huh. Oh, that's if we happen to be in creation mode, but we probably aren't in creation mode. Because I don't think we got that in our message. Yeah. 3 is the crazy thing. I wonder where 3 is coming from. But anyways, so that one's just going to keep throwing me off. So at this point, see, this is the first time I know what the dynamic AR should be. But this is when it got set up here. Okay. And then, okay, so now when we come in here, if we look at, okay, don't think I'm in the right. That wasn't it, right? What a pain in the butt. Okay. We're in here in create camera. Nope. Man, what the heck? Okay. I'm just going to look for this string. It is, well, it's an app layout component.ts. Okay. So let's go to app, control P, app.component. TS. No, that's not the right place, I don't think. Lordy, lordy, lordy. Okay, app update layout. There we go. App update layout component. Okay, so this is the first time. So when we look at our thing, okay, so these aren't doing me any good. So let's see if the problem goes, that expression problem goes away if I get rid of those. Now, we passed in the viewer width and the height. Okay, so that is going to our app viz. Okay, so I'm going to hit save. I'm going to see what happens with this. Let's see if we get caught in our, it's still not built. It's weird. That's weird. Okay, so let's reload. So I got, oh, because I got rid of those two things in the add update. Oh no, we still have the problem. Okay, so it's saying that the current value is 3, filled is blank, host component def lview app update layout. So it's upset about something in here. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now of fixing that. I definitely will fix it for sure. Okay, so anyway, so we can go to the viz. So the viz is the second place, right? Okay, so I'm going to say console log. This is the second time I know it. That the AR should change. Okay. So let's come over here. Let's, I don't know why this, I guess because it's in the console log. We're back in that bug. So now let's go look at our console. Oh, okay. Okay, so at this point, okay, so we are getting this because this happens all the time. But so we know, like, I'm guessing the width and the height is 300. Man, okay. I guess it makes sense that the viz, that the parent should tell the viz if it's a dynamic or not, and what the width and the height should be. So I didn't want to do this here, and I don't know why I didn't want to do it, but it just say dynamic AR. equals input Boolean false. And I don't know if I've doubled down this other error that we're going to have. I don't think so, because this is something we're just going to pass through in code, so I don't think it makes a difference. So I'm giving it that, and I'm going to just say wherever that first thing, which is an update layout, here is where you know, right? You know if it should be a dynamic layout, a dynamic AR, or not is equal to true. Right. And I think we kind of have to do it that way so that it calculates it. I don't think you can, yeah. So it's going to pass in a string if I do it this way. But for some strange reason, and I don't really understand exactly why, but when you do it this way, it actually runs code against it. So then that gets turned into a Boolean. I don't know why. I don't know what the deal is, but so basically this dynamic AR is not required, and in this case it's going to be true. And we're going to say, hey, for this layout, for the update layout, I'd like you to dynamically determine the AR. Now the thing is like, I guess, yeah, I don't know. So this approach I'm taking seems like it's very likely to fix the problem when I go to this page. When I come into the edit or the update view, but it's probably not going to take care of the case when I leave and I go back. And so I'm going to have to figure something out for that too. So anyways, this AR thing, this aspect ratio, is very, 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 very typical of sort of like everything in ThreeJS. This is not a criticism of ThreeJS, right? This is like more of a observation about the domain of rendering three-dimensional things. Like it seems very, very complex, right? Like every once in a while I'll get recruited by a recruiter for like ThreeJS stuff, and they'll be like, it's usually something like dental, a lot of dental things, glasses things. Like they'll want to build like something in like those sorts of domains, and and they're just like, oh, we want somebody who understands like calculus and geometry and algebra and all those things. So we want someone with like an engineering background or something. But they don't realize that like there's a whole bunch of computing things that are very, very weird about rendering. And one thing is like, we want to render things in the screen, and I want it to look right. And I don't know exactly why ThreeJS. I would love to know what why they decided to be able to, like, why would you ever not want the aspect ratio to be correct? That doesn't make any sense to me. Let me ask that real quick. So I am working with ThreeJS and setting up a camera and dealing with aspect ratio is tricky. Why would ThreeJS, where the developer specifies the AR instead of just calculating it based on the size of the element it is going in. One of those design choices that 3D surprised the first time they set up a camera. Cameras are independent in 3JS. A perspective grid doesn't know what it will render into, so you can render the same camera into it, just part of, or even into a rendered target texture. Because of this flexibility, can't assume that the camera's aspect ratio will always equal the canvas size. That's a good point. The dev may want different behavior. Cameras are math first, not DOM first. Is part of the math, not part of the DOM. The library deliberately keeps the abstract. Go beyond the DOM, off-screen rendering, no textures, VR. Yeah. No, but this does cause some interesting timing and architectural issues, because AR is the only one that that depends on the size. Was setting up the camera before the element exists. Yeah, exactly. Hit on the pain point. The aspect ratio is one of the parameters that can't be set in isolation because it depends on the real measurement. All right, it's pure math. That's why. Yeah. So I can't remember what the FOV is. I think it's like how much you can see. So like every human being has a different amount of peripheral vision, and so like the FOV, I believe, is the space that you can see in. So like, and it was very interesting to me when I first ran into that concept a couple years ago, because like I literally, if you make the FOV smaller, everything gets bigger, that is drawn bigger. And so then I started going outside and like I would look at something and then I would reduce my FOV, and sure enough, it does get bigger when you reduce your FOV in real life. It's like kind of crazy. But so last year I completely lost grip of the camera and all that stuff. Like I got so deep into other abstractions that the camera kind of got lost. This is a pain point that I really didn't account for in the existing architecture. So I think it's important. So at this point, like, this is like literally a single one unique individual issue, right? That's for one very specific individual thing. That is what leads to death by 1,000 cuts. Like where you have so many little isolated things that it becomes almost impossible to determine if the code that you're writing is going to have some sort of really bad unintended reaction, and so consequence. So anyways, I think this is the route to go on this. Like there is no way to determine the proper the proper aspect ratio if where it's going to be drawn can change sizes, and I really want to be able to change sizes in something that I draw. So this is, I think, going to be the thing. Now the problem, I guess that, okay, so this dynamic AR, even if I have to come up with some other solution for when we go from this view, let me turn off my debugger list thing so I don't have to worry about that thing popping up. So when I go to this view and then I go to this view and then I go back, so this is going to be perfectly fine for calculating and going, oh, okay, I need to create the new camera. So I need to delete my old camera and create a new camera. And that was like another thing. Some things in ThreeJS you can just update. You can take the existing one and update it, and some things you can't. And I wonder if can the AR be modified in an existing camera, or does a new camera have to be created? For oh, okay, so this is not true. Thank you. Yes, this makes me happy. So some things in cameras, some things in ThreeJS can be updated. You don't have to destroy the old one, and other things can't be updated. You have to destroy the old one. You can't just update it. This is one that you can update. So so that makes it, I think that makes it a lot easier. It looks like we can just I could just take my camera, my old camera, update the width and size, and then update the projection matrix, and then that will do that. So that means it's really not very, I don't think it's very expensive to actually update that every time. So even whether it's true or false, we don't need to, but I will need to know if it's true for when we implement resize. But I don't know if that works or not. I mean, I don't know if I should do this now. So I guess what I'm going to do is, man, this has been a completely a disaster of a episode. Okay, so in here, so I got rid of that, and I think I have it in here. Yeah, so we're getting rid of this, and then basically, and see, this is something that you, like I said, you won't always be able to do this with everything. So it's hard. But in our viz component, when we go to render, okay, so we do know. So what I'm thinking at this point is that render native element. Component visualization service render, go to that definition. So this is in the service, and then so then over here, render, and then it calls this render here, and then render set size is our width and height, render by ID. And then we go in here, and see, that is so much easier for me to do. So is to just calculate and follow the the steps. And I had kind of come into the conclusion that um, um, I'd come to the conclusion that uh, you can't. I'd come to the conclusion that was the only way. That was the only way to code, is by following the steps as you go through things. I did not realize that no, there's a whole different way of coding where you just know where everything is, and then it's like for me, I guess like I, if I needed to figure out the way I do coding would be if I was like living in my house and I needed to go to the bathroom, and then I was like, okay, I remember that there was like plumbing that goes to the bathroom. Okay, so let me go find the plumbing. Okay, let me follow that plumbing. Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. There's a this. There's a that. Oh, oh yeah, that's right. And then just sort of do the clues to get to figure out where the bathroom is so I can use the bathroom. Um, but there's also remembering where the bathroom is and getting up and just walking over to the bathroom. That is sort of the kind of coding that I think a lot of people do that I don't do. Um, and then when I write my code, I sort of write it optimized for figuring out, being able to step through and find the path, follow a set of clues and get to where you want to go to. Um, but I am trying to get better at the other way, even though this way has served me very, very well over the decades. But anyways, so here I need to calculate the render. But what's so annoying about this is um, I do not have, at this point, I don't have the width and the height. So that's the um, that's the trick, right? The trick is like, do I have the width and the height? But the thing is I also don't have the um, so I don't have the width and the height, um, and maybe I don't even want to have the width and the height here. Maybe I want to actually pass in the element and calculate it. Um, so let me go. Okay, so console.log. Okay, so the aspect ratio needs to be calculated. Needed and set here. And this is a really good thing to think about. Actually, I'm really glad this came up because one of the things is that we probably want to pass in the whole element. And reading an element in modern coding is easy. It's not expensive. But like that about 15 years ago, they changed the way browsers became better. And it used to be, there was a time where there were some conditions where you would read it and that would actually cause the the browser to reflow. And and reading was very expensive because it was forcing the browser to redraw so that it could read. But something changed. I don't know exactly what changed. And I think that React gets the credit because what React did was they actually created a secondary DOM that stored all this information so that you don't force reflows. That was like one of the brilliant things they did, but that I believe all the browsers have since updated so that isn't a valuable. That's not a useful thing that they have anymore. But anyways, so I think I need to send in the element from here. So render by ID, I believe, I'm just going to say element, and I don't know what it is, any, and that's required. And so we'll let the browser figure out. Yeah, so this only gets called from the viz service. It's the only place this ever gets called here. And I believe it knows the element. Yeah, so I believe that's what this is. It also does know the width and the height. I don't even know if we need the width and the height anymore, though. Rendered element ref native element. Render DOM element. No, so I think, yeah, this is the element ref. So that is the actual element that we're using, comma. Element. And then what I'm going to do now, because I do want to strongly type this. Right now I have it set to an any. And my favorite trick, sometimes it works. I'd say 9 times out of 10, it works. If I change this to a string, then the compiler will tell me that, hey, you can't do that because this is not a string. So I don't know why that didn't work. So let's just do this. Const a, which is a string, is equal to this. Let's see. Why is it not breaking? I feel like something is wrong. I feel like that should have got caught. Well, okay, so I know what it, no, I don't know what this is. So it's saying that that's any, and what it is an HTML div. I don't know why that isn't HTML div element. I think that's what that is. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of, I'm going to copy this. I just can't even begin to tell you how many hours upon hours I've spent learning how to strongly type things. I had this one job where we would literally spend more time strongly typing things and getting it to pass the linting rules than we did, like literally 10 times as much time than we did coding. Okay, so now element, boom, and now I want to see. Wrong one. And I should get to see it now. I hate that. Okay, so this is our element, right? So it's 200 by 200. So we can actually get the width off of that. So let's just make sure style offset. So I think we are actually we did this for something else too. I don't think that's right. Can't stand that. Oh, so we got that bug even, or that might have been an old. Console log. Okay, is this the right one? Yeah, element. So this is our element that's here. Element div with, and I thought it was like offset height and offset. Yeah, offset height and offset width. Did I misspell it? Or maybe it's style, right? Was it under style? No. Oh, it looks like it's just right at the top there. For some reason, I thought it was under style. Element dot offset width dot offset height. Let's run that. And let's get rid of this. Let's run that. Go to the console. So it did reload element 200 by 200. And then if I hit update, I said update. I say update. Yep. Aspect ratio can be, okay, so 830. Okay, so we can do that. And this ChatGPT did give us this code. So I think what we can do is we can calculate our, okay, so I guess we want this here. And then we want it to be 3 camera. And we want this to be element offset width. And I don't know if I'm happy with this or not. And I'll probably want to pull this into a different function to make things a little bit easier to unit test. And I will probably want to, we'll probably do some, it's probably going to be like a lot of work to figure out how to get rid of that item changed bug. Okay. And then I guess just so we can find our way back to this spot, console log. And see, that is a perfect example. Like some people would just remember that we're in the ST renderer service. I put a console log on, log in there. So that I'll be able to figure it out, you know, whereas I think a lot of people would just be easy, just be like, oh, okay, I'm in ST renderer service, but it's just the way my brain functions. It's a little different. And voila, that is done. Oh man, and I feel like that's a good way to do it. Not 100%. I'm a little bit nervous because I don't really like this code being there, and I definitely think probably makes sense to like call update, like put this in its own function where I pass it in the width and the height and the camera, and then so updating the aspect. But, and one of the things I was worried about was like, hey, whenever I go to leave this, the aspect ratio will be wrong. But because of it's getting calculated every time, but it's not like happening that much, right? Like set starts here. Like it's only happening when we click, right? So like if I click here, then it's calculating a new aspect ratio right there. And so what we really don't want to do is calculate it here. But this isn't particularly expensive anyways. It looks like all we're doing is modifying memory. And we're doing this one calculation, which is a bit expensive, right? Like actually doing a mathematical calculation like that is does hit either the math coprocessor or your processor, depending on what the architecture of your computer is. But so you don't really want to do things like this, like too often, like these arithmetical type of things. And it's fine to do them, but you don't want to do them in a situation where it's going to be calculating the exact same thing over and over again. Although apparently my understanding is that when you do set something like that up behind the scenes, JavaScript engine actually solves that. But anyways, this was probably a super long, an hour and 36 minutes. And this was a day I did not have time to do this. But I think this was a really important one. I think this is exactly what I needed to do. So basically the next step is to pull this into its own little function, and then the following step will be to figure out how to get rid of that stupid expression changed issue, and then I think I want to commit that, and once we've so then I have to unit tests and end-to-end tests, and then once that's done, the next thing I would like to get done would be like, so that when I do this, it automatically resizes. So that means it has to calculate a new one of these things. And so I guess my guess is what's going to, here's how I think it's all going to play out. I think that I'm going to create a function for this, and this is going to run. And then B, I'll call that whatever is doing the updating. I'll probably be like, make a flag, like has the AR been updated since the last resize? And if that is not the case, then if it has, then I'll call that function to update the camera. And otherwise, I might even call render by ID. I don't know what that does. Render service. See, I think if I were to call render by ID at that point, it would automatically take care of everything. I think. Anyways, so that's going to be an interesting one. Anyways, happy coding, everybody. Bye.